Welcome, everyone. We are excited to be here and share a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So, my name is Heather Mylan Maines. I live in the central United States in the state of Iowa, and I've been doing this for a long time. I do business analysis for a variety of companies, and I'm always working with people. So, people are very much a focus of where I've spent my career and trying to understand them better, trying to communicate better. And this is a topic that's going to help us all. We all need this skill set. It's a differentiator among professionals. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the better you're going to be able to work with people. So I think a lot in my work, I work with processes, and processes have people, and processes have data. And we really need to be thinking about how we can do this more effectively, especially as we move into artificial intelligence. So we're going to explore a lot of things. And yet, please share questions. We'll be happy to take care of those at the end. I'm always interested in engaging in understanding this topic better. So with that, let's dive into emotional intelligence. So we're living in a time that is a very interesting intersection of people and technology. So as I consider my lifetime, and we're all at different avenues of life. When I was growing up, it's Christmas time now here in the United States, and you send Christmas cards or letters. Some people still do that. When I was growing up, it was in an era where if your friends moved, you actually wrote a letter and you put a stamp on that letter and you mailed it off to wherever your friend went. And maybe in a week, maybe in 2 weeks, you might get a letter back. The difference in how we communicated then and how we communicated now is extremely amazing. A text message can be sent anywhere in the world, and within seconds, you have a reply. We are speeding up and having much different interactions, and this is the same for our businesses. I was recalling when I first started, I mentioned my accounting background. I worked as an accountant for an insurance company before I became a business analysis professional. And I would have reports I needed to monitor and look at. And the length of time it would take a system to generate a report and print it was over an hour. So if you can imagine, I needed to start printing a report for a month, go to lunch, come back, and maybe it was done and maybe it wasn't. How quickly do we generate information today? It's just incredibly fast-paced and changing. It's difficult for me to function without a cell phone. I used to travel with a paper map and no phone, and the United States is vast. I would drive across country and not have a cell phone. The idea of waking up without my cell phone now is uncomfortable. Things are changing rapidly, 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 so fast. I would date myself and say that I actually had children before the internet existed, which blows my mind every time I think about that because it's so entrenched. So this is new opportunities for us as professionals as we think about the intersection of people and technology. And I'm going to say that emotional intelligence is super, super important. And people have been thinking about this for a long time. So thinking about what it is and trying to understand it, Plato says that, all learning has an emotional base. He lived a long time ago and he was thinking about this. So emotional intelligence, as defined by psychology today, is the ability to identify one's own emotions as well as the emotions of others. So we're going to talk about how do we understand what our own emotions are. I'm a person, I understand people. Working with them shouldn't be difficult, right? It should be super easy. I would say that it's the most difficult thing we're ever going to do. And there are lots of reasons why. So let's talk about it. This is a little bit about me. So this is a little bit about my story. Titles I've had in my life include I've been a daughter, I'm a sister, I've been a mother, I've been an aunt, I'm a great aunt now. I have been a wife, I've been a widow, I've been a caregiver for children, for my aging parents. I've been a friend, I'm a teacher, I'm a worker, and so many other things. And I am complex, just like each one of you. We have a complex life and a complex story. And all that plays into us having a mix of our beliefs, our successes, our failures, our cultures, our relationships, everything that we've experienced in our life. we bring to the table to every conversation. And because of that, we are complex. Every person that we interact with has a complex story that is not exactly the same. Even though I have brothers and sisters that grew up in the same household with similar experiences, we are not the same, even though we experience the same situations, which is fascinating. Same thing with our team members. They're experiencing the same things we are, but they're bringing with it all kinds of different backgrounds and experiences that creates a different message at times. So we've got to work harder to understand it. So let's talk about the foundations of what emotional intelligence is to understand people better. There is a Disney movie that is a fantastic movie. If you have not seen it, I would recommend you watching it because it is a story about emotions. And in this story, there is a young girl, her name is Riley, and it starts from when she's born and it goes through where she is growing up and the family has to move. So she's experiencing changes, which we all experience in our life too. And in this movie, there are five main emotions, and these emotions live in her head, just like these emotions live in our head. They are joy, anger, sadness, fear, and disgust. So it's an interesting look at how emotions play in our mind. Um, I giggled quite heavily when she was a baby and she was being introduced new food. Some of you may have experienced this with your own children. Maybe you remember trying new foods as a kid, or maybe you try new foods as an adult and you might act the same way. So these emotions, when it's something that she likes, joy is going to create giggles and delight and smiles, and I want more of that food. And then there's food that she doesn't like, such as broccoli, and anger and sadness and fear and disgust all get involved. And at one point, disgust takes over and she takes the broccoli off of her plate and she throws it across the room, which I think is quite funny because as a child, we're not really in touch with our emotions and we don't know how to react. So her picking up that broccoli and throwing it away off the tray is representative of how much we don't like things either. But as adults, hopefully we learn to just set it aside on our plate and choose not to eat it, and hopefully not even say anything about it because we can control our emotions and recognize that's just not for me. So she is learning how to work together, and these emotions have battles and conversations about, well, how do we react? Is this safe for her? How do we do this? This is the same exact situation that goes on in our mind today. So we have battles between emotions. Now, there is a point in time in the movie where Riley has to move. Her dad takes a new job. They move from the environment that she's at. She's 11, which is a pretty foundational developmental time, and she is forced to go to a new environment and she becomes quite sad. So there's a lot of work showing how sadness interacts in her life and takes over and how they work to find joy. So each of us is going to work to try to be happy in this situation. And the character Joy, who is shown in kind of a yellow with blue hair, she's the only character that has two emotions. And the premise of it is that you can't have joy or happiness without a little sadness. And I think that's really telling in life. There is a time we don't know how to be happy or how to be joyful until we've had a time where we're not and we're sad. So we're thinking about this. One of the challenges is that we have to master our own emotions and we have to understand how are we feeling about a situation. Once we have an understanding of our own emotions, we can start to transfer that to others. So we're going to talk about that. Now, I wish that emotions could be as simple as joy, anger, sadness, fear, and disgust. However, they are not. This is a really powerful diagram that shows emotions. And Robert Plutnik has done a lot of research on emotions, and he has added some emotions to our five. So primary emotions are shown in the middle circle. I don't know that you can see, you probably can't see it. So you see the joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. Those are primary emotions that he has identified. Now, looking at this diagram, it's going to give you a lot of information about intensity of emotions, opposites of emotions. I'm going to guess each of you can relate to these things depending on what's happened in your life and what's going on. So thinking about this model, these emotions will have opposites. So if you see joy is shown in yellow, and the opposite of joy is sadness. Just like I said, we can't really have joy without sadness. Uh, the physiological response to these two things is that joy wants us to connect. We want to be connected with it. If it's food we like, we want to eat more of it. Whereas if we're sad, we withdraw. We don't want to participate. Maybe we don't want to speak up in meetings. Maybe we need to have some alone time. We are going to withdraw as a person. So joy, sadness, fear, and anger. Fear is shown in the darker green, anger is shown in red. So the physiology of fear is if I'm afraid of something, I'm going to get very small. I'm going to maybe you can imagine like if you were afraid in a situation, you might cower or move to a corner because you're afraid. You want to get away from what's making you afraid. And if you're angry, you're going to get very loud. You might get big and use your voice and maybe physically stand up and move your presence when you're angry. So that's what those can create. Anticipation is the opposite of surprise. Surprise is blue, anticipation in orange. So the physiology of those two are if you are anticipating and excited, you're going to examine it closely. You're going to spend time learning. You're going to be engaging with someone who's sharing that topic. You're going to be listening really carefully. Whereas if you're surprised, you're going to jump back and go, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this. It's not a good or bad necessarily. It's just I need a moment. I'm going to disengage." Disgust is the opposite of trust. Disgust is shown in kind of the purple, trust in the bright green. So physiologically, that is if I am disgusted by something, maybe by something someone said, maybe it creates an offense in me and I'm really not happy with what they say. I am going to reject it. I'm gonna dismiss it. I don't want to listen to it. I'm gonna disengage because I'm just disgusted. Now, if I trust it and it's someone that I believe in or a message that resonates with me, I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to want more of it. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to be engaged. I'm going to be interested. So those are important aspects of things. The combinations, so we've got some combination of emotions that are shown in the white. So, for example, they're a mix of two primary emotions. So joy and trust together create the emotion love. So if we are happy about something and we trust it, it creates a very endearing feeling of love. There are some foods we really love because they make us happy and I trust that I like it and that I don't get sick if I eat it and different things like that. So that creates love. Same thing with people's messages. There are people that we really like to listen to or we trust. Maybe someone, a mentor, a leader, or someone who has a message that we really resonate with and we believe in. These are complex. Not easy, is it? It's not as simple as just being happy or sad. Another thing that's shown on this diagram is the color. You'll notice there are gradients of color. So some of the colors are lighter, some of them are darker, and that represents intensity of emotions. So the let's take anger, for example. So anger for quite some time is annoyance. I know I remember as a child, my sister annoyed me a lot. Like I would be annoyed by something she did. Maybe she was bothering me. Maybe she was trying to play with my toys. Maybe she was interrupting me. The annoyance happened and happened and happened. And then I started to get angry. I was like, stop it. I don't want you to interrupt me. I don't want you to take my stuff. I need to be by myself. And eventually it could show up in rage where I might scream at her or I might kind of hit her to say, get away from me. I want you to leave. Maybe some of you can relate to that with your siblings or other situations, but it started as annoyance. So part of emotional intelligence is how do we get a handle on something before it gets more intense. So, how do I respond to an email that has an angry tone or maybe someone is misrepresenting what I know to be true. How do I stop at annoyance and try to understand how to move forward before it turns into an angry response in an email? Don't ever do that. That happened early in my career, and I've learned to stop and get a handle on things. Other things, let's see, boredom. Boredom, we could be bored with something, like maybe we're on a work project and we're not very excited about the work. Eventually it can become that we absolutely loathe it. So how do we deal with our boredom before it becomes more serious? Get the idea. So understanding how we feel, understanding emotions, and understanding that it's not just simple and that it's complex is the start to emotional intelligence and getting helpful. Hopefully that was helpful to you. I find it helpful to study that. The next part of emotional intelligence is going to be self-awareness. So now that we've got emotions, we understand those a little bit better. We maybe have an understanding of I am feeling this. This is the emotion. I need to really understand who I am. And one of the most important things that we can do is just because I feel some way doesn't mean that that's true. Doesn't mean that that's a fact. In my own work, something that's been hard for me and something I speak about often is feedback. I don't know about the rest of you, but there are times when someone gives me feedback and it could be critical, which is important for me to get better, but it can hurt me and it can hurt my feelings. I can feel like I am not valuable. And I know there have been times in my career where this is a time where different kinds of communication are actually a detriment to me. So if I get an instant message from my boss at the time, maybe, and the message says, let's talk, instantly my mind starts to develop a story about I'm getting fired, I'm not good at my job, people don't like working with me. That was my initial response, and I had to really work at understanding, wait a minute, his message isn't clear. I don't have enough information. I have no idea. And by the way, I've never been fired. I've never had a situation that couldn't be resolved or wasn't able to talk through to understand what was going on with the conflict. So I have no basis to even believe that, but my mind can quickly go there. So I've had to work at understanding that these feelings I'm having don't represent who I am or what the situation is. So thinking about that aspect of monitoring our thoughts, our stress, our emotions, and our beliefs is really an important key to being emotionally intelligent. So thinking about this, another key, there's an acronym that I have used, and it's used a lot in parenting, but it relates to us as well. And that acronym is HALT. It's HALT. So sometimes when we become emotional about any sort of conversation or response to something, it could be that I'm hungry. Hangry is a real thing. If we do not give our body enough water, enough food, um, that's going to impact how we feel. So you might ask yourself, wait a minute, in this minute, how do I need to take care of myself? Am I hungry? Do I need a snack? Do I need to get some water? Let's take a minute and pause. Angry. Am I angry about something else in my life that's not going the way I would like? And if I'm angry, do I need to phone a friend? Do I need to go take a walk to help get some endorphins and help myself feel a little bit better so I can better respond to whatever's going on? So that's the eight. The A, am I angry? L, am I lonely? Am I feeling disconnected? From other people? Am I feeling disconnected from my work? Do I need to take a moment to pause and meditate? Do I need to phone a friend? Do I need to go and visit someone? Do I need to go and spend some time doing something good for someone else so that I don't feel lonely, so I can better respond to what's going on? So that's the L. And the T, tired. Oh my goodness. As I have become more mature in my life, I realize that there are several keys that I have probably missed. And one is I need to drink enough water. Hydration is super important. and I need to get enough sleep because sleep is actually how our brain will repair from the stress of the day. We need to give our body rest. So if I am tired, I'm going to have an emotional response. Maybe I need to go and take a 20-minute nap somewhere. Maybe I need to go and just be still and sit in nature. Something to reinvigorate myself. So if I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, I am going to not be as self-aware and I'm going to have emotional reactions. So thinking about all those different things, that's a tool you can use to become more engaged. So once I know my emotions, I'm self-aware, now I need to manage myself. So the HALT acronym is one component of how I could manage myself. I would offer that this book, it's a very short read. It's called The Four Agreements, and it is a Toltec wisdom book. So, Toltec wisdom is a Native American source of wisdom and thought, and reconnecting with the universe, with nature, those kinds of things. It's really a powerful book, and it gives four agreements that we make with ourselves. So the first one is to be impeccable with your word. Words matter. What we say, how we say it, both verbally and in written words, are super important. I would offer that text messaging in some ways, or instant messaging, or email even, has created a division in communication instead of making it better. It's easy to misunderstand words. It's easy to use angry words when you're not face to face. Those are some things you can really work to self-regulate and manage yourself as be impeccable with your word. Don't say things that are unkind. Don't say things that are untrue. And try to take emotion to some extent out of your conversation. Stick to facts is another way we can do that. So thinking about words. Really be, there's a saying, at least in North America, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I would offer that words are actually more detrimental than sticks and stones or throwing something at someone. Second agreement. Don't take things personally. This is really, really powerful when you start to realize that, in fact, if someone is sending you an email that has a negative tone or is just not the way you should write an email or communicate, the chances are it has very little to do with yourself. It has much more to do with them and not regulating their own emotions. And it's easy to respond back with a similar tone or symbol of frustration. If you just say, I'm not going to take anything personally today, really makes a big difference. Like it's more about them than it is about you. I had a leader, mentor once who was so helpful to me because he said, when I get those kinds of emails and I see that someone has emotionally responded to a topic and they send it to me, he's like, I just let it sit. And I just think to myself, you know what? Glad I could be here for you. You obviously needed that. You obviously needed to say that. Glad I could be here for you to just, absorb that and not respond. Give people the benefit of the doubt, right? So don't take things personally. My mom said something very wise to me years and years and years ago. My mom's passed now, so I take all of her wisdom as, something really important to me to remember. She said, Heather, no one is worthless in this world. You can always be a bad example. What that meant to me was if you're in a situation and you see someone maybe yelling at a subordinate or accusing someone in a very harsh tone, loudly and publicly, you can see that and you realize, I don't ever want to treat another person like that. That's a bad example for me. And there's a lot of value in that. So don't be that bad example, but recognize the value of someone's having a bad day. Don't take it personally and move forward. Thirdly, don't make assumptions. Now, assumptions are really important context once they've been verified and you can prove that they're a fact. So assumption itself is not a bad thing, but it's easy to make assumptions. That story I told you about feedback for me and my leader, if someone says, let's talk, I'm making all kinds of assumptions about what's wrong or what that conversation should be. And it creates stress and problems for me. So instead, if I don't make an assumption about it, I'm just like, okay, well, let's go have a conversation. I can move forward with a little bit more grace. Lastly, always do your best. None of us are perfect. We're all trying. We're all working towards practicing being better human beings. And if you try your best, you try to be respectful, you try to honor someone else and what they're feeling, you think, I don't want to treat someone the way I wouldn't want to be treated. If you're doing that, you really can't be expected to do any more. You might get feedback to improve and you can try to change and move forward, but just always do your best. So, very simple agreements to help you self-regulate. Oh, this would be the ultimate goal for all of us is to have empathy. And there are hundreds of books about empathy, about what this is and what how you get it and different things. So I'll try to sum it up in my viewpoint in a few different tips. Thinking about emotional intelligence, it's really important that after you're self-aware, you're self-regulating, you understand your emotions, you understand other people have emotions, then you start to move into this space called empathy. And that's sharing thoughts and feelings of someone else. So putting aside your own thoughts and feelings and recognizing that someone else is having a very hard time, that things are hard in their life or they're struggling with learning something and it's stressful, whatever it is. So we need to have empathy for each other as human beings. So even though technology is changing, even though we're communicating in new and different ways, we're generating intelligence differently with AI tools, we're still people. The people haven't changed. We are fundamentally the same as we have been throughout time. We have different experiences and different tools in this modern day age, but we're pretty much all the same, and we still have all these same feelings. So knowing that today, even though we have more tools and more ways to connect, like I said earlier, we're probably more disconnected as people, which creates stress. There's been a lot of stress going on. We've had a pandemic, we've had all kinds of disruptions, economies are shifting and changing in our families. As you grow older, your parents are growing older, your children are growing over, there's shifts and changes in our life constantly, and it is stressful. So we need to be thinking about how do we empathize with each other. And empathy is not feeling sorry for someone. It's being able to sit with someone as they grieve a change in their life and just giving people the benefit of the doubt if they're having a bad day and letting them have that bad day instead of telling them, well, you really should be doing this or you really should be doing that. So let's talk more about empathy and how do we acquire it. Well, Brene Brown, I'd recommend reading many of her books too. She's actually a shame researcher who's done so much work to help us understand how do we work better with people, how do we understand ourselves better. She offers this perspective on empathy. So empathy is going to fuel connection, and sympathy drives disconnection. So if someone feels sorry for you, you feel disconnected. You might feel ashamed that you are having these feelings. But if I show you empathy, I'm going to be connected to you. I'm going to trust and I'm going to maybe feel some joy, which leads to that emotion of love. So we're connecting better with people. Um, this picture is me holding my mom's hand. Now, this is the part where I'll get a little emotional because this was a few months before she actually passed. My mom suffered from dementia. And if any of you have been around people with dementia, it's a very hard thing. And people talked about it, and I thought I empathized, and then I experienced it. So now that I've experienced being with someone who has lost their cognitive ability and is so afraid and unsure of where they are, what's going on, they don't really understand. They become like little children, very dependent and very scared. So that experience taught me to empathize, to really
understand what it's like to sit with someone when they are in extreme pain. So some things that are not empathy in experiences are what Brene Brown calls silver lining it. So if you were to say to someone whose parent or loved one or friend was experiencing dementia, for example, if you were to say something like, well, at least they had a lot of good years, that's not empathetic. Um, that don't say at least to anything. Some phrases that you could say that would be moving towards the empathy are, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad that you shared that with me. Um, that's connection. That's saying thank you for sharing. That must be really hard. Um, this could be for any experience anyone's having in their life. People lose jobs, people lose spouses, people lose children, people lose parents, people lose friends. Um, People lose a way of working that they were used to. When we work with people in organizations and we're dealing with changes, in my work, there's never a situation where something doesn't change. It could be as small as a field on a screen. It could be as big as now you're going to use an entirely new system, or you're now going to use a mobile version of what you had used on your laptop, or you're going to use laptops instead of a dedicated computer. There are lots of different changes that people are going to have, and it's hard. It's a loss. So I need to be empathetic to how they're feeling and what they're doing. Being present and active listening, choosing to listen to someone and not feel like you have to add your own story, but just to be with them. That is empathy. Um, Another phrase you could use if someone's voicing that they've had a hard day and they're frustrated with communication, maybe with their teammates or a boss or something. You could say, "I hate it when that happens to me." Like you're just acknowledging that this is hard and super important. So empathy, differentiating skill set for all of us to be more empathetic. Another part of emotional intelligence is motivation. You need to think about how do I um, how am I motivated? How can I motivate someone else? Because in working with people, we want everyone to achieve more. We want everyone to do their best. So motivation is a key part of it. Daniel Goldman, who has developed the concept of emotional intelligence in the mid 90s as a discipline, identified four elements that make up motivation. Our personal drive to improve and achieve, commitment to our goals. Can we make a goal and set it? It's coming up on the new year. It's very common for people to do New Year's resolutions. You can set a goal any time of the year. It's just very standard that we think about it at the beginning of a year. It could be the beginning of a month. Each new day, you could have a different goal. Uh, we need to thinking. The third thing is initiative or readiness to act on opportunities, as well as optimism. And fourth is resilience. So you can see how these components relate to what we might call emotional intelligence as well. Optimism. What a valuable way of approaching life. People who will be quick to say why something can't happen or why that won't work. Instead, shift your thoughts and your words. Well, let's think about what do we need to do to make that happen? What is possible? Optimism is such a key thing, and resilience, being able to stay in a situation even though it's hard, is a differentiator for emotional intelligence. I'm still here. Yeah, I've had hard things, and I'm going to talk to you about them or share with you or empathize with you. But we need to encourage each other. I think one of the key components to emotional intelligence is you kind of have to like people. You have to care about them and you have to want their success. So that's a key component of motivation as we think about that. And when we do care about people and we're interested in being empathetic and motivating them, that's going to help us build relationships. And I would say that as we move into the world of artificial intelligence and we need connection between human beings, it helps us to build relationships. Super important in our life. We should be adaptive. Change is not going to stop. We're going to have more and more of it. So how do I learn to adapt and how do I understand what I'm feeling and be able to honor that and move through it? I'm gonna have to be creative. I'm gonna have to manage my stress. And stress is so harmful in emotional intelligence, but also physical well-being. How do you manage stress is a key component too. And practicing things such as mindfulness. I mentioned meditation earlier. How are you mindful about understanding and honoring what you're feeling, but not getting stuck there? This is a funny slide. It's intended to be funny. I'm a mom of two sons. I can tell you, we communicate and think very differently. This is a component of emotional intelligence to have social skills. And it's certainly oversimplifying things, and it's not just a male, female situation. But I will tell you that my sons are much more simple in how they communicate, and they're much less focused in some of the details that I am as a woman. It's just because we're wired differently. So emotionally intelligent people are going to learn to lean into hard things, and they're willing to connect with people, and they're going to treat people with respect. They're going to be polite. They're going to have civility and staying out of judgment. We don't want to be judging like the unspoken communication for girls is. So we spent a lot of time talking about emotional intelligence and all these different components. So one of the things, this is kind of a summary of these are things that are unique to human beings, no matter where you live in the world, no matter what your experiences have been, we're human beings. And as such, we have emotions. We need to understand our emotions. We need to be willing to think about why I'm feeling a certain way and maybe fix it. You know, the acronym HALT. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Fix it. How do I get in a better space? Then I'm self-aware of why I'm feeling a certain way and not making up stories or excuses, understanding the facts. I need to regulate it. I need to use my words appropriately. I need to be aware of my impact in a situation, self-regulation. I have to have empathy. I have to really start to understand other people and feel with them, be with them, and give them that space as they're feeling. I should be motivating. I need to motivate myself. I need to have goals. I need to achieve things. I need to encourage other people. And social skills. I need to be polite. I need to be respectful. I should be civil in my conversation. It goes back to using words appropriately, using emotions, sticking to facts. So all of these are components of emotional intelligence and foundational to understanding what's this intersect and why does this matter with artificial intelligence? Well, some things that are going to become important as we think about artificial intelligence in our worlds and our organizations and the work we do is we need to understand that there are ethical impacts of using AI in our work and be aware of the impacts of that and how it affects the people and shift our focus on not just the neatness of what the tool can do, but how does that work with the people, both inside our organization and outside our organization? And how do I make sure that I can create safety? How do I make sure I manage information to my organization correctly? How do I use it respectfully, et cetera, et cetera? So let's talk about that more specifically. So now that we have an understanding of emotional intelligence and people, we need to think about how does change impact people. Now think about yourself for just a minute. I want you to consider something that's changed in your life recently. And I want you to think about how did you feel about that change? Go back to that wheel of emotion, all these different emotions. How did you feel about the change? Then consider your organization where you're working is going to be shifting some of the work that a human being is doing in some way, shape, or form with a tool that uses artificial intelligence. How do you think someone else is going to feel about that change? Sometimes for me, because I work in the technology space, I have a lot of understanding of the positives of a change and the excitement that it can bring. So I have a bias where I know that it's going to be okay. Like there'll be different work for me to do. There'll be something else going on. Not everyone has that perspective and background. So artificial intelligence and changes I'm going to guess at least one or two of you in this audience have the change you were thinking about is you weren't excited about it. Maybe it was something you didn't decide. Maybe it was something that was, forced upon you. And change and managing change is a whole nother topic we can talk about another time. But thinking about that is, I'm a person at a job and artificial intelligence is coming in and my job's going to be replaced. That's going to impact my ability to live. Maybe I can't live where I'm living. Maybe I'm worried about feeding my family. How do I take care of my children? How do I take care of my parents? That can be quite scary, and we need to honor that and understand it. Another situation with artificial intelligence is that the information is not always accurate. It's getting better and it could require a lot of oversight. So I actually might have to work a little harder in different ways than I did before. I'm going to have to do some verification and make sure that all the communication is accurate and represents exactly what it should. And I might feel that I'm not important. Like, why is my organization choosing to use a system rather than people? So I might have my sense of self questioned. So we've got all these changes. And so emotional intelligence is going to allow us to better navigate how do I help someone else in their change journey. And we need to think about that too. There's a book that I think is really, really helpful, and it's John Kotter is a change expert, and he's done a lot of research in change. He has 8 steps to change. He talks about one, establishing a sense of urgency, so making sure people know that there's a problem in the organization and we need to change it and why we need to change it. Two, forming a powerful guiding coalition, so getting a team of experts in the organization to work on understanding the problem and creating a vision, which is step 3. Make sure you have a vision for where you want to go. So if I'm using artificial intelligence, why am I using it? What's it fixing? What's the problem we're experiencing? And I get a group of people to understand the whole organization. And I get a vision so people know where we're going and they get excited about what that future can look like. Step 4 is communicating that vision. So I need to communicate it all kinds of different ways because we don't all learn the same because we're so complex. And 5 is that we empower others to act on that vision. So we get people involved in the change. We get people experimenting, doing prototypes, doing iterations, getting feedback, improving how that tool could work in our organization, and making sure you're talking to other people and not just springing it on them. 6 is planning for and creating short-term wins. So as you have successes or improvements for whatever the problem was, you're going to talk about it. You're going to highlight those wins and you're going to keep making them better. 7 is you consider more improvements and implementing more change. And then 8 is institutionalizing new approaches. So very simple. This is a great book. It's written as a fable with a bunch of penguins and their icebergs melting and the change that they have to go through to live in a new way. So I would recommend checking that out as you work through emotional intelligence and how that can help with AI. Another aspect is I'd mentioned feedback being a topic for me. So imagine if this is how you receive feedback on your work in the future. Keep up, WRK. I hope this is not your annual performance review, but it might be. It might be. So that's lots of room for improvement. So thinking about artificial intelligence is we need to be mindful of if artificial intelligence replaced some sort of performance review or feedback loops, is that really the best choice? Is that ethically what we want to do? What risks do I introduce to an organization to remove a human being in this process, a human being with emotional intelligence skills that can help share messages more effectively? And maybe we need a different review process. I mean, lots of things that we could consider for sure. So feedback is another topic that you probably want to think about. Just because it's an option, should we do this? So this is the next thing is think about how you're leveraging artificial intelligence. In my work as a business analysis professional, I'm an advocate for people. And part of the value that I bring is not just a technical thought process, it's a human thought process. I joke with my name and say, well, Heather the human needs to do this. Has anybody thought about how Heather will be using this new tool or this new technology, or what is she doing today? How does this change what she'll be doing in the future? And how does she feel about that? I think as we move into spaces where we're looking at artificial intelligence, we need to be very mindful of both the people inside the organization who are doing the work, but also our customers or people outside the organization. How are they going to feel as we move to a solution that takes away a person or communicates in a less empathetic way, maybe. Chatbots can be, I mean, they're getting so much better, but it is sometimes really annoying for me that I can't just speak to a person and have a conversation to understand what my problem is, because despite all the business rules and the things we've tried to do, like it's just not, my issue isn't represented. And we're not going to do 100% of things because we're people and we're complex. Think about some text conversations that you've had. Um, is the message clear? Would we want to use chatbots in some of our professional conversations? Is that effective? Does anyone become, it's interesting generationally, this is definitely a difference between people. I definitely will pick up the phone and want to speak to someone, whereas my children would probably keep the text conversation going on a long time, and they might become emotional, they might become frustrated because the words aren't making sense, or the context isn't there, or it's not a full sentence, or I'm missing a whole part of understanding. Communication is complex. So thinking about how we interact with some of these tools and how a person would respond, I think is an important aspect of being prepared and how we use emotional intelligence things. And this introduces risks. We need to be very aware of the risks in our organization and what risk it might be in artificial intelligence. And I think it's really important that we challenge and say, just because we can do this, does it mean we should? Is that the right thing for our organization to do? And that's a component of thinking about people and how it impacts them. So thinking through this, a machine can learn lots of things. So many things are faster and better served by letting a tool help us, but it won't ever replace human interaction. It cannot. There's not heck, sometimes I don't even know why I think something or why I respond some way. We are complex. So going back to the beginning where I showed this picture of me and different people and different roles I have in my life, because we're a complex, part of our success could be assuming positive intent. It's always a good idea to be kind. You never know when someone is dealing with something really hard. I shared about my mom. I've had other very hard situations in my life. I never know when someone else isn't dealing with a very catastrophic loss. Um, I had to, one year I had to put three of my dogs throughout the year to sleep, to go home to dog heaven. Super hard emotionally, super hard to be present, and I was grieving a lot of my canine companions. Um, who knows what someone's got going on? So always be kind. It's never a bad idea. So with that, I thank you. I hope that you've taken a few ideas and thoughts from this, and you have a better understanding of how emotional intelligence can impact you personally and professionally. And thank